For gaming laptops, high refresh rate displays have long been the standard, with even budget models coming with 144 or 165 Hz panels, while 240 Hz are the de facto standard for everything from the mid-range and up. But for the most part, you actually had a very hard time getting there, even with high-end mobile GPUs, unless we are talking more lightweight or competitive titles. But for everything more advanced, you would have to drastically reduce settings, and even then, the restrictions when it comes to power and framerates simply prevented super high FPS gaming on laptops for the most part. That pretty much changed with the rise of upscalers, and even more so with frame generation, and today marks the official release of DLSS 4.5, NVIDIA's latest and greatest when it comes to making your games run faster with just a few clicks. And while the upscaler part made headlines ever since CES, when it comes to image quality, frame generation gets a boost as well, and now goes up to 6x, and it's also dynamic, so only the frames you actually need are generated. I was able to test all of this for a couple of days, so let's see what this means for your actual FPS experience, how well it all works in general, and what kind of drawbacks you have to live with. Let's get into it. And just to get it out of the way, given that we just had a few days to test the new frame generation options, this is mostly just an early first impressions type of video. To take advantage of DLSS 4.5, be it for the upscaler part to improve image quality across the board, or to use the new dynamic options for FG, or go up to 6x in general, you will have to go through the NVIDIA app and enable these specific overrides on a per-game basis. This might change in the future, but it might take some time before games will be updated, so you can choose these options in the graphics menus. While it is a bit cumbersome at first, once you get the hang of it, it's actually pretty straightforward. So for upscaling, you simply go to your desired game and select Recommended, which will choose the fitting model based on your display resolution and your in-game settings. And I did a little trial run in Stranding 2. And by the way, I'm once again using the Alienware 18 Area 51 for our testing, this time because of its 300 Hz refresh rate for the internal QHD screen. And for some of the 4K tests, I hooked it up to their very own 32-inch 240 Hz OLED. And speaking of 4K and circling back to Death Stranding, this puppy runs the new game in its highest performance setting with ray tracing and with DLSS in quality at around 55 to 60ish FPS and almost 100 FPS with DLSS set to ultra performance mode. And since I did the override in the NVIDIA app, the game is actually using the second generation of Team Green's Transformer model. And yes, quality still has a bit more depth, especially when it comes to finer shadows. But the overall level of detail is actually quite impressive, even in ultra performance mode. And if you do not want to utilize frame gen or reduce settings, playing around with the different quality modes of DLSS is definitely something you should try. But we are, of course, here to talk about dynamic frame gen, so let's get into that next. The overall setup is similar to what we did with DLSS before, and in supported games you get the dynamic option in the FG override section. And here you can either set a specific refresh rate target or simply use your display's native capabilities, which in our case would be 300 Hz. And similarly, we choose up to 6x, since that is what we came here for in the end, isn't it? So let's see how it works, and I fired up Cyberpunk in QHD and the ray tracing overdrive setting, so that means full path tracing, and with DLSS set to balanced, I got around 60ish FPS without frame gen. And well, what can I say? Seeing Cyberpunk path traced running on a laptop, even if it's powered by a mobile 5090 and getting around or even above 300 FPS is pretty nuts, I am not going to lie. For those of you concerned about latency, I did some testing with the game's integrated benchmark, and while there is a jump from just using DLSS to the original frame generation setting, which is 2x, dialing things up all the way to 6x is only corresponding to a minor increase in overall render latency. Can you feel it? Personally, I would not be able to tell the difference between 2x and 6x, while I could notice jumping from 6x to just DLSS. Does it bother me though? Well, not really, and I would probably opt for using FrameGen for my personal gaming sessions. During regular gameplay, FrameGen would hover between 5x and 6x, and you would definitely not be able to feel the switch happening here at all. And overall, it's been an incredibly smooth experience. But as always, this will be subjective, so your mileage may vary here. From about 200 games at launch that will support the driver level override, Avowed was on the list as well, and since I always wanted to try it, well, testing it with dynamic MFG sounded like the perfect opportunity. This time I opted for the full DLSS 4.5 experience and set the upscaler to performance to take advantage of the second-gen transformer model and enabled dynamic MFG with the game itself running once again in QHD and max settings including ray tracing. And once again, things were hovering around 4x and 6x frame gen, depending on how demanding the scene on the screen actually was. And latency was mostly below or around 40 milliseconds. And even though I was playing with mouse and keyboard, it was simply put, once again, an incredibly smooth experience. And it even felt a bit more direct than Cyberpunk, which you should keep in mind, since every game will behave and again, feel a bit different here. When it comes to image quality, FrameGen is also not quite perfect, with some artifacts around fast-moving edges. I usually forget about these or simply do not notice them when being immersed in a game, but they are definitely there if you know what to look out for. With the new FrameGen model store, NVIDIA also provides an update to how user interfaces are handled, since those can sometimes be impacted as well, with slight artifacts when moving. Apparently, the update uses in-engine data to basically exclude UI elements from FrameGen, which should in theory lead to crisper visuals. For now, only a handful of games are supported and the effect is quite subtle, but I will definitely keep my eyes on it in the next few months. Which actually brings us to the end of today's video. Once again, FrameGen is not the magic feature that will give you more FPS without any drawbacks. There are definitely some compromises, be it subtle artifacts or a slight latency hit, but you also get quite a bit in return. And I know we have been focusing on a 1590 today, but we will definitely do some additional testing in future videos with lower tiered hardware. But again, you can now run a few of the most demanding games currently on the market at incredibly high refresh rates. And with the added dynamic part of the frame generation tech, you can make sure only the FPS you actually need are rendered. And if you are simply not a fan of the technology, definitely make sure to check out the performance or even ultra performance modes when gaming in 4K of DLSS, since you basically almost get the same overall image quality but with drastically improved frame rates without having to reduce in-game settings. But as always, let me know what you think, especially when it comes to laptop gaming, where these technologies are incredibly useful and important if you ask me. Sound off below, and for everything else about tech and laptops, well, you know where to find even more videos. Please leave a like and sub on your way out. Thanks a ton for watching, folks. My name is Alex, you have been simply fantastic, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.